Hey guys, how we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. Firstly, apologies that I haven't been on for a couple of weeks. I've had a little bit going on aside from this YouTube stuff, but I am back. So, as always, plenty of news to go through, and it all starts here in Australia this week because there's one fighter on everyone's lips. His name is on everyone's lips, and that is Tim Tszyu. He's been mandated by the IBF to challenge Bakram Murtazaliev for that IBF 154-pound belt. Now, the fight, surprisingly, will take place in Orlando, Florida, which is a little bit odd for a fight of this stature, but that will take place on October 19th. Of course, Tim is coming off that controversial 12-round decision loss to Sebastian Fundora back in late March. Great opportunity for him to get straight back into a world title fight. Murtazaliev, on the other hand, is coming off an 11th round stoppage of Jack Kulke in Germany back in April of this year. So apparently there's a 3-fight plan in place for Tim. This is the first one, of course. Then it's looking like Erickson Lubin, and then possibly Jamal Charlo at some stage next year. Still to be convinced on the Jamal Charlo side of things, and even Lubin to some extent, because he hasn't shown a desire to meet Tim Tszyu, but that seems to be the plan. Murtazaliev, Lubin, Charlo, and then possibly a Terence Crawford fight. I would think he'd be aiming, if it's me, that he'd be aiming for that Sebastian Fundora rematch. So I've got a feeling if he wins this, I know there's a lot of water to go in the bridge with lots of other matchups and everything going on. And there's the Spence Fundora fight hasn't been finalised yet or announced just yet. So while that's still up in the air, I wouldn't put it past the organisers, promoters, powers that be, that maybe we do get Tim Tszyu against Fundora. Maybe not in the next sort of 6 months or so, but definitely within the 12 months. So looking forward to seeing Tim back in action on October 19th in Orlando, Florida, to as I said, get one of those belts and then be right back in the mix. There are reports that Jai Opetaia will be part of the October 12th show in Saudi Arabia. That is the Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev event. So let's hope that is the case. There's a few different opponents being thrown around, but that is the rumour at the moment. Opetaia coming off a 12-round decision over Marius Briedis back in May of this year. He looks really keen to get back in there, stay active. He's had lots of injury problems over the journey, of course. So it'd be great to see Jai Opetaia remaining busy, because I think this guy, the busier he is, the better he's going to get. So let's hope, fingers crossed, that Jai Opetaia lands on the Bivol Beterbiev card on October 12th. Big show this Saturday night. It's the Premier Boxing Series at the Mansfield Tavern. It will be shown on 7+. Floyd Masson, the main event in that fight, or that event against Joshua Francis. Floyd Masson 13-1, Francis 15-2-1 from New Zealand. Now that fight will be fought over 8 rounds at cruiserweight. Masson coming off a 6th-round stoppage of a 6th-round loss to Yves Nagbu in September of last year, where Francis is coming off a 6th-round decision win over Ben Kelleher in May. Also on that card, the main support fight, Nicola Costello 4-1. She'll fight Sarah Watt 4-6-2 over 8 rounds for the Australian super flyweight title. On to the world scene, and we're still getting over last Sunday's epic 154-pound title fight between Virgil Ortiz and Sergey Bohachuk. Controversial, I know. The official scorecards were 114, 112 times 2 for Ortiz and 113 apiece. So there has been talk that maybe there might have been a rematch. That was the talk after the fight, but Virgil Ortiz and his father have well and truly shut that down. Apparently, Bohachuk, in return for letting a rematch clause be left out of the contract, wanted a whole heap of concessions that were granted by Ortiz. And now that Ortiz has that interim belt, he said to Bohachuk, pretty much, see you later. So let's see what happens there. And it doesn't surprise me, if I'm being honest. Virgil Ortiz, it was a tough, close fight. He'd be definitely looking to move on and not take any more risks before getting a potential fight with Terence Crawford. Speaking of Crawford, that is a potential fight that is being looked at by Turki Al-Sheikh and Golden Boy. Part of that card would also feature Shakur Stevenson and William Zapata. So if that card does come off, what a massive fight card that would be. Both of those fights, 100% main events in their own right. But Terence Crawford, Virgil Ortiz Jr., and Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda has been spoken about potentially as a co-joint main event later this year. So let's keep the fingers crossed for that one. Still on Terence Crawford. He's officially vacated his WBO 147-pound belt. Of course, now he's the champion at 154. So Brian Norman Jr. has been elevated to full champion and is apparently eyeing fights with Boots Ennis and Teofimo Lopez and who knows who else. Lopez, for that matter, has actually expressed a desire to fight Terence Crawford, but at the moment, Lopez is at 140. Crawford is, of course, at 154. So I doubt that fight happens. But still some okay fights to be made around those divisions, particularly if you throw in Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, those types of guys. So let's see if we can maybe get Brian Norman Jr., maybe with Boots Ennis down the track. Also, last weekend, Angelo Leo upset Alberto Lopez with a 10th round knockout to win the IBF 126-pound title. That fight took place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Angelo Leo improved to 25-2. Alberto Lopez dropped to 30-3. Now, Canelo Alvarez Edgar Berlanga, if I could spit that out, of course, is September 14th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The press tour has officially kicked off, and as expected, it is a circus, particularly from Berlanga's point of view. The co-main event on that card is Danny Garcia and Erislandy Lara. Of course, Caleb Plant is already is on that card as well against Trevor McCumbee. Now, the other thing, actually, just on the Caleb Plant McCumbee fight that is part of this card, apparently that was supposed to be the first, the Amazon Prime pay-per-view. This was something I didn't mention at the start. The Tim Tszyu and Murtazalia fight. Been a long week. Bakram Murtazalia fight is apparently going to be on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. Sorry, not pay-per-view. It'll be free. Backtrack, rewind it. Tszyu Murtazalia will be free on Amazon Prime. But berigely, the Caleb Plant and McCumbee fight was supposed to be. Now, of course, because of injury, it's been moved to the Canelo and Berlanga card. So, got it out eventually. All right, we'll move on. Speaking of Jaron Boots Ennis, which I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, he's been mandated by the IBF to fight Karan. I'll try and get this right. Chokhadzian, if that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if I've got it wrong. I am no good with Russian names, but he's been ordered to fight the Russian in a rematch. Now, if you remember back to January 2023, Ennis did win a pretty conclusive and dull 12-round decision over the Russian. That's as much as you're going to get out of me. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name again. But Boots Ennis apparently not overly happy about it. But, of course, we'll do what the IBF have ordered, because the IBF have shown that if you don't abide by the rules, they will strip you. So not a great fight next up for Boots Ennis. Another rematch that may be on the card is Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang. Joseph Parker 35-3. Zhang 27-2-1. Of course, Parker won a decision over Zhang earlier in the year, so there is talk that maybe they will rematch later this year, maybe on one of those big cards in Saudi Arabia. Not really a lot going on for either of those fighters, so it probably does make sense, but I'm sure Joseph Parker wouldn't be overly impressed. He had the conclusive win over Zhang, and he's got to fight him in a rematch, and not much is going on for belts. But you got to do what you got to do when you're ordered by His Excellency. So let's see what happens there. Chris Eubank Jr., 33-3, has put his hand up for the May date with Canelo Alvarez. So there was talk that he might be in line for the September date. Of course, Berlanga's got that date now, but Eubank has said, well, who else is he going to fight? It's not a bad point. Canelo's already probably made clear that he doesn't really want to fight Benavides or Morrell, who have both gone to 175. So Chris Eubank saying, well, not those guys. How about me? Eubank Jr. is coming off a 10th round knockout of Liam Smith in revenge of his loss earlier that year in 2023 I'm talking about. And, I could probably think of worse opponents, but I can also think of a lot of better opponents. Maybe even someone like Chris Mbili, who is up this weekend. He's going to fight Sergey. He's another one of those Russian names, Deryachenko. And Billy 27-0. Derevyanchenko is 15-5. That fight will take place in Quebec, Canada. And Billy coming off a first-round knockout of Mark Heffron back in May of this year. And Derevyanchenko, the Ukrainian, we might call him. He's 2008 Olympian, by the way. He's coming off. Actually, I haven't got his last fight there. Apologies about that. But again, 15-5. So I'm not sure whether it's on here in Australia. It is on ESPN in the States and Canada. So hopefully we get that fight here. And just to finish off, Sonny Edwards has been. I've lost my. My what they call them, cue cards there, guys. It's all good. Sonny Edwards has been announced that he will fight Galal Yafai later this year. Sonny Edwards 21-1, Yafai 7-0. He is the Tokyo Olympics gold medalist. So that is a fight apparently Eddie Hearn is looking to put together at the end of the year. So guys, that's about it. Apologies, a little bit rusty after a couple of weeks away. With the name pronunciations and a few dates and that sort of stuff. But rest assured, I'll get it right next week. Have a great weekend watching the fights, and we'll catch you next week.